Hello, and a warm welcome to This Woman's Work, a space where you can hear and read about some amazing women, the fantastic jobs they do, and the paths that have led them to where they are today. So I'm here with Sophie.
Hello.
Hi, Sophie. Did you want to tell the listener in your own words what it is you do for a living?
So I'm a tattoo artist in Stamford. Between me and 8 other people, we have a studio sort of just off the centre of Stamford town. We've got 5 artists, a nail artist, a body piercer and a sort of business management woman. I've been officially tattooing, I guess, for 5 years now.
And how long have you had the studio for?
So Eden itself, we have had for 3 years. It was just before lockdown that we sort of signed a contract on Eden. And I think within 3 months, it was just shy of 3 months actually, because we weren't entitled to any government help because it was just shy of 3 months. We got locked down. So I guess for a year of that, we did absolutely nothing. And then when we did come back into the studio, it was all like massive PPE and all that crap for a good year. So I guess normally working in the studio, we've probably been at it for a year and a half. Ish now.
So you didn't get any support at all?
No, none. So
but you also had to pay all your rent and all your rates
absolutely,
and everything.
Yeah. So what the government did, because we were self-employed and all of us were self-employed before we opened Eden collectively, we were entitled to get the self-employment help.
Right,
so we would be given the grants of what we would earn, averagely minus 20% or whatever it was. But sort of me, Sammy, all of us were sort of starting up, bar AD, who had been a tattooist for a while.
Right.
So all of our incomes for that sort of 2 years they were basing it off was so low.
Yeah.
And what most businesses got within Stamford, I don't know about other councils, was like a £10,000 grant to pay their rents and their rates and stuff. We didn't get any of that because we were short of that time cut off. So we were literally being told, you need to pay your rates, you need to pay your rent, you need to pay your waste service, even though it's not resuming, because if you don't, you will lose all them things. But we weren't actually given any help.
And, I mean, God, you must have considered just throwing in the towel, did you?
So no, to be fair, us as a team, we all sort of got together over Zoom or messages, whatever it was at the time, and worked out a way that we could all pay an amount in to be able to keep the business going. And to be honest, the way we did that was through clients on our social medias, us saying, this is a situation we're in, we're all really honest about it. Yeah. And clients would be like, okay, so we know you're going to reopen at one point. Yeah. Here's a day session's worth of money. Tattoo me when you come back to work. So those people really saved us to be able to keep the business open. But it did mean that when then we were allowed back, and at this point for a year and a half we had earned nothing. When we were allowed back to work, we were then working for nothing. Because we were working paying back those people that so generously offered to pay us during lockdown.
Gosh.
Yeah, it was mental.
Well, I think I'm going to be interviewing a lot of self-employed people in this, and I think it's going to be crazy hearing these kind of stories. So, blimey. Okay, so you've been tattooist for 5 years, salon for a couple of years. What were you doing before that? What predates tattooing? Okay,
so I guess directly before I started tattooing, I was working for the shittest company I've ever known as a cleaner, just an in-house cleaner for different sort of families.
But you were getting ink yourself during this time, were you?
Yeah, so I've been tattooed since I was 18. Yeah. And my brother that I mentioned earlier that I now work with, he has been a tattooist for 14, 15 years now.
Wow, okay.
So it's always been something that I've been really interested in, but I had my first son incredibly young and I just needed to pay the bills. So it was whatever I could do to just pay the bills. Because an apprenticeship, they're great and it's how you should learn to tattoo, but you don't really earn any money in the first few years of an apprenticeship. Yeah. And I couldn't support my child while doing an apprenticeship. Yeah. So I was literally just cleaning houses.
You said you started getting ink from 18. Yeah. Was your brother doing it? Did you used to let him do it?
Yeah, so AD's done a fair few of my tattoos. I've had a few of my tattoos done elsewhere. Really naughtily, and I can't say this is the right way to go, but at like 15 I was tattooing myself at home. And that's not okay, you shouldn't do that, but I was doing it.
Well, no, at school and stuff, were you arty? I guess I've got to ask that. Because...
Yeah, I was always artistic.
Yeah.
Probably the only thing I ever felt I was particularly good at was the artistic side of things. My mum is an artist. My granddad is an artist. My older brother is an artist. It's really funny in our family because there was a definite split between an artistic side and a really quite smart side. And the artist didn't really get the brains, and the brains didn't really get the artistic side. And there was like such a deadline split between us. So like 2 of my brothers are tattooists. Yeah. One of them's an accountant.
Oh my God. Is he your accountant?
No, so he does do my accounts.
So what was the first point then? What was the how did you make that transition?
Years back, before I was a cleaner, I was working with AD in his studio at the time as a body piercer. So I'd got my qualifications as a body piercer.
Okay, yeah.
I'd learned all the sterile chain, all of the hygienic part of that, but still really had no idea about tattooing. But was watching AD, and the sterile chain, the hygiene part, is very similar across piercing and tattooing.
Oh, right, okay.
The only thing that comes in slightly different with tattooing is sort of skin infections and all of that.
Yeah.
So I learned all of that part. And when I was working as a piercer, I hated it. I literally hated it. I could tell you stories for days of why I hated it. But also...
just getting asked to do some really dodgy stuff?
Just weird stuff.
And did you start tattooing at your brother's place then?
No.
Right.
So it was always kind of a plan that I would be piercing there and look into the tattooing side of things. Yeah. Me and AD are so very similar. I think we are both very much BPD or something along them lines. And we are...
What's the age gap?
So AD's 10 years older than me. So really close, but also so similar that with a one look we could piss each other off. Right. So as much as we had great intentions of making that work, at the time we were both just in a really shit place. Yeah. That it was never going to work us working together. Yeah. Which is, in reflection, is sad. But I think then when we came back together 6-7 years later to form Eden, we were both more grown up. We were both in better places, in better relationships, just better as people. Yeah. And now we
sometimes
can work
the timing's just not right, is it?
And it wasn't.
Did you then work for another studio, or you were just sort of doing it privately, or?
No. So the story of what happened is when I was cleaning, literally left work one day, I thought, I'm not doing this anymore. Yeah. It's not for me anymore. And I said to my then husband, I'm going to open a tattoo studio. And he kind of laughed it off and was like, you don't know how to tattoo. And I was like, I'm going to teach myself. Fuck it. Don't worry. I'm going to teach myself. So bless him, at the time, he let me tattoo him. I practiced on him, some of his family, his younger brother, some of my family, friends, all of that stuff. And like I said, I went and approached a hairdresser who had a room to rent. Right. And I just said, please just give me a chance. She couldn't look at anything I'd already done because I hadn't done anything.
So but you literally, she bought you. She literally bought you as a person.
And I got on with her so well. And bless her, she recently passed away. And she was such a huge energy in Salford. She's massively missed. But I still owe so much to her. Because she literally was like, I'll let you give it a go. So I was paying her rent weekly. She knew nothing about tattooing, but such a great business mentor. Just a powerhouse of a woman. And through her, I think I really found my confidence to grow. And then I started advertising really cheap rates. So some really great customers were like, yeah, you can do me for this. And then I could have work to show the level I was at. Advertise some more. It becomes
self-fulfilling, doesn't it?
And it was just kind of went from there.
Wow.
And then from where I was in the hairdressers, another little shop came up, and it was actually the shop that my brother AD had before, and he moved on to a bigger shop. So I approached him and was like, would you care if I took the other shop? And he was like, no, go for it. So I took on the other smaller shop, which was on North Street. Okay. And that's when I approached Debbie the piercer and was like, just come with me. And again, at that point, she would have had people telling her, don't go into business with her. She doesn't know what she's doing. I probably didn't really know what I was doing. But again, Debbie took a risk with me. She came with me, and that's when we formed Aurora on North Street. And again, just kind of grew from there. My skill set grew. I think it was at the end of sort of that era that I really found who I was as an artist.
Yeah.
Not fully, because I'm still not sure who that is. But I started really to love what I was doing and meeting people, and it felt less stressful and more rewarding in that era.
Yeah.
And then obviously how Eden came about is one of my good friends had it as a makeup studio, and just before Christmas she was like, I need to stop the makeup studio because she just had her second child. She wanted more time with the kids, and her original business was already thriving so well. She was like, I don't need that extra stress.
Yeah.
Do you want a bigger place? And I did want a bigger place.
Yeah.
I didn't want a bigger place just before Christmas, but she was like, just come and have a look. So I went and had a look, and I absolutely loved it.
It is a great space.
The beams, everything about it. So then I rang AD, my brother, that night, who at the time we weren't massively close, but I was like, look, this place has come up. I really think we should consider going into business together.
Wow.
And he was like, okay, I'll look at it. I think he was happy where he was, but again, we both wanted to grow.
Yeah.
And eventually, I think we both knew we would end up working together.
Yeah.
Just needed to be the right time.
Yeah.
So he came and had a look, and at the time, his Mrs. Sammy was also with him, and now my partner Darren was also with AD. So they came across the studio and had a look.
Yeah.
Also loved the place. So we're like, let's just do this. Let's just take a risk and do it.
If we track back, I mean, God, I could just ask loads more questions about that. But if we track back, and I guess we've sort of touched on this already about what was it particularly about tattooing. Because I guess if you are an artist, which you are, you could have done all sorts of things, I guess. And I'm guessing you still do. You probably do draw and sketch as well. But what was it that made you think, I want to express that in the art of tattoo as opposed to on canvas or...
Yeah, so I do think I'm a fairly fierce feminist.
Yeah.
I massively believe in equal rights and everything. And from a young age, I started getting tattooed. From a really young age, I hated my body. So probably like 5, 6, I was noticing I wasn't the same as other girls.
Most women, yeah.
And I really hated myself for it. And it was only when I started tattooing myself at 14, 15 that I actually really liked the look of my body because I had tattoos on it.
Yeah.
People stared, but it was for a different reason. And I loved that.
Yeah.
And I felt like if I could be a tattooist to make other people feel like that. And to be fair, not just women, other people.
Yeah.
I have a man that's lost 9 stone and now hates his torso and wants to cover his torso with tattoos because maybe he'll love it a bit more then.
Yeah.
And I think he will.
Yeah.
And I think like it's such a massive thing to be able to express who I am artistically and also make a huge difference to how people feel about their body, that tattooing just made perfect sense.
You've obviously taken a slightly more ad hoc approach to getting qualified, but obviously you've got to be licensed anyway.
Absolutely, yeah.
So that's one thing. And there is, to get licensed, do you have to prove a level of skill, or is it just you have to just register, which basically makes you accountable, and then you get insurance and everything for it?
So you do have to prove your level of knowledge towards the sterile chain, towards not giving you a bloodborne disease, to make sure that everything you are doing is sanitary.
Yeah.
So you do need to prove that knowledge. You could literally not be able to draw a thing and they would give you a tattoo license as long as you can prove you're not going to give someone HIV.
Yeah.
Which is massively the important part because art is hugely subjective.
Yeah.
There is a woman in London who is a tattooist and a bloody well-known one making thousands of pounds for the fact she cannot draw. She does ignorant tattooing. So shit drawings that your 5-year-old child could do, but people travel to her through country because that is her style. So no, you don't have to draw. There is no art qualification you need.
Yeah.
You do need to prove that you're not going to be unsanitary.
Sanitary, yeah.
And so different councils have different levels of rules.
They do, yeah.
So in Stamford, you need to have a clean and a dirty sink.
Yeah.
There needs to be so many sinks to the amount of people that are working.
Yeah,
There needs to be a sink in each bay, for example.
Yeah.
Whereas in Peterborough, I've been tattooed in places where you didn't need a sink in the bay. And so each council is vastly different. So wherever you're planning on setting up a tattoo studio, you need to check your council's rules because what rules are to me won't apply to you if you live in Brighton or London.
And that's probably good advice if you want to get a tattoo and if you are a little bit, I don't know, not OCD, but if you are a little bit, you know, as a lot of people are now, aren't they, really into hygiene and stuff more, then you can obviously then know if you want to
what
go
the rules are,
whether
they're following the rules.
Yeah.
And actually, reputable tattooists would want you to look that up.
What inherent sort of either inherent skills that you have, obviously artistically, but also life learned skills, do you think you have that make you particularly good at this job?
I think this is a really hard question for me, because being artistic will help in this industry.
Yeah.
It will help. But I know tattoo artists on the seafronts in seasides that cannot draw, that are 100% making more money than I am. And that is because they have a flash wall full of tattoos that people
they've not
will go
necessarily
in,
done.
and they wouldn't have done them. They would have been off the internet.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People can go in one after in each other, and it's £50 a time all day long.
Yeah.
So by the end of the day, they've earned £1,000. They've drawn nothing.
Yeah, yeah.
But they have earned £1,000. So I think there is a really big difference between a tattoo artist and a tattooist.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And there's no shame in that, by the way.
Yeah,
you can go earn £1,000 doing that. Go and earn £1,000.
Well, and if somebody just wants to pay 50 quid,
I'm not looking down my nose at that.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, yeah.
There is a huge difference. I do believe in that. So in terms of artistic skills, I don't think that's necessarily anything to do with why I'm a tattooist.
Yeah, and what makes you good at it. To
be good at being a tattooist, you have to have a really thick skin, because there is going to be people
I was going to say resilience.
Shit.
Yeah.
You are 100% going to get that. And especially in the first few years, there will always be someone that says, well, I don't think she should be a tattooist. And the answer is that don't get a tattoo from me. No one is forcing you.
Yeah.
But someone will always say you're shit, and it's always going to get back to you, and you're always going to hear it.
Yeah.
And you can either go into yourself and cry and think, yeah, they're absolutely right. Or you can think, but I won't be here next year, and keep improving on that.
Yeah.
I feel like
that's got to be art in total, isn't it? Because it's so, everyone's got an opinion about it.
It's rough to be an artist.
People go, well, yeah, rough. I don't like that, or I don't get it, or it's like even the ones that I've had done recently. You know, I've got some of my friends that go, oh my gosh, that's so great, and the other ones go, oh my god, why have you done? You know, why? Because everyone has an opinion, don't they?
Everyone will have an opinion,
and they always have an opinion about people's, like you say earlier, about people's bodies and things, and they want to share them.
Yeah.
So resilience, basically, you've just got to be
really
tough.
Hard work, because you are going to have people tell you shit, and there is going to be a year where you earn barely any money because you are learning to do this, even in an apprenticeship or how I did it. You will be learning on the job, and there will be really nothing in terms of earnings there. You will pay probably what you cost you to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, just
you've got to really want to do it, basically. Yeah. I guess the flip side of inherent skills or life learned skills, what challenges do you think you have in particular? So I think either personal characteristics, strengths, weaknesses, anything like that I think that I guess you struggle with in this job, which is probably might be linked back to the first point in some respects, but is there anything that you think you struggle with?
I do think it's harder to be a female tattooist, and that isn't the feminist in me speaking. Yeah. I think it's harder. From my stories being a female tattooist to my brother's stories being a male one, I think it's different. I think we all get a little bit objectified. We have cool jobs, so we are a little bit objectified.
Yeah, yeah.
But I've personally had situations where I felt unsafe in being a tattooist.
Oh.
And that's shit. And I feel like, so when I was working at hairdressers, I was in a tiny room at the top of the hairdressers. So the rest of them were like 2 floors away.
Yeah.
And I had a man come in who was really drunk, 9 o'clock in the morning, booked in for a tattoo, but he was very drunk, bless him, clearly had a problem. Sat on my bed and I was like, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I can't tattoo you while you're drunk. Yeah. That's my duty of care to him.
Yeah, yeah.
And he was like, well, what are you going to do about it? And that's threatening and that's crap.
Yeah.
And he's right, what am I going to do about it? I can't make this 6 foot tall man leave.
Yeah.
And I feel like in that moment, he knew he had a position of power.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm not sure that would have been the case if I was a male doing that same job.
Yeah.
I've had to ban a man because mid-tattoo he's told me he'd like to ejaculate on my face.
Oh my god.
That's a completely normal thing to do to me because I am in this industry. And I feel like you wouldn't say that to a girl at Costa.
Yeah.
But because I'm a tattooist and you see like tattoo magazines and it's all like a little bit sexualised.
Yes, it is.
I'm very open about sex. Never with clients particularly.
Yeah.
But again, it was just acceptable. And I was like, I'd rather you didn't come back, I'm uncomfortable. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable. Don't say that.
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
I know you have a little life in you yet. I know you have a lot of strength left.
there is a whole shift now in about boundaries and what is and isn't acceptable. I guess, have you seen any shift in that?
Do you know where the shift came? Is when we moved to Eden. And I hate that fact, because I hate that it probably came because now I'm in a room with
other people,
but that's when it happened. We don't get that anymore. None of us get that anymore.
Yeah.
Because we're in a room with other people.
Yeah.
And I do feel like when people are being slightly inappropriate, it's not as easy to do that with onlookers. It's not my word against theirs.
Yeah.
It's mine and his and hers and what their word against yours.
Yeah, yeah.
So I do think it's different.
It's
when
safety,
you're in a big
isn't
room.
it? Yeah.
Yeah.
God. So what has been, and this might be a tricky one and it might be multiple things, so far, what has been the absolute best part of being a tattoo artist?
So I think we all find massive pride in the fact that we moved to Eden. We had that shit rough year with COVID.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And even through that, we've grown from 5 to 8.
I've got to ask, in terms of the work you've done, though, has there been any particular story that stands out more than anyone else? Other than, I mean, obviously you've already touched on just empowering women's bodies, which is obviously fantastic.
So yeah, there is always one story I'll always remember. It was about 6 months into starting, so it wasn't very far in. And this is not remotely artistic. There has been parts of artwork that I've done that I've been so proud of, and like entered certain pieces of tattoos into competitions and I've won them, and that's amazing.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really proud of that on an artistic front. The one that will stick with me is I had an 87-year-old woman come to me when I, like I say, fairly new. And you know how you see some nannies that have like got dyed hair and they're like really cool?
Yeah, yeah.
She wasn't. She was like a proper Tupperware nanny.
Oh,
like
wow.
what you'd expect on a Betty Crocker advert.
Oh my gosh.
And she's so well spoken, and she's like, oh, just like my first tattoo. I was like, oh, okay, that's amazing, let's do it. And she was like, yeah, I've recently lost my husband, so I'd like something to do with that. And I thought, you know, like little memorial things, sweet little things to remember her husband. So I did like some drawings for these sweet little things to remember her husband. So she comes in and she's like, they're really lovely, but I had a really specific idea in mind. I was like, okay, what is it? She's like, I just want the words, not today, Satan, tattooed on my arse. And I was like, what? She's like, yeah, that's all I want. And I was like, okay, but I thought I was doing something for your husband.
Was that something that he had said then?
And she said, basically, my husband was a narcissistic, controlling man for 40 years of our marriage, and I stayed with him for the kids, and I thought, you poor woman. And basically, this is my final fuck you to him, now he's dead. And at that moment, I was like, this is my industry. I love this place.
So she absolutely validated you in one kind of...
One sentence.
Yeah.
Just so sad. She'd waited her whole life. Wasted all that time with an arsehole.
God.
But that's all she needed, was her fuck you to him.
Yeah.
And I was going to give it to her. And that was the best thing.
So when you say on her arse, is it on one cheek?
On her arse cheek, yeah.
Yeah.
Just not today, Satan.
Amazing. Oh
And
my
she
God,
was just the
have
best
you got a
person.
photo of that?
No.
Damn it.
So I did.
We need to find that lady and get a picture.
She didn't want her bum photographed, which was fine. But yeah, just.
Do you know, is she
the
still
best
alive, do you
thing.
know?
I don't know. I haven't seen her around in town. I hope so. I hope she's just
living her best life.
fucked off to the Isle of Man on a motorbike. Just,
Oh
do you know what
my
I mean? Just
gosh.
living it now.
There you go. Oh, I love that. Okay, so I think we've probably already touched on this as well in terms of what's the worst part of doing what you do. Because I guess I just want to give a feel for people for kind of like what the highs and lows of this kind of job are. And I think you've already discussed that brilliantly in terms of some rather nasty stories. But anything else?
You never clock off.
Yeah.
Ever. And I am fiercely trying to
And especially
divide my
not with
time.
social as well now.
There's no social life for me, if I'm really honest.
Yeah.
My time is divided between working and my boys.
Yeah.
And I will flip between this 10 times a week between, right, I want more time with the kids now, and right, I want really passionate work going on in the studio now. And there's no middle ground. I will get messages at 3 o'clock in the morning asking for a tattoo quote. If I go out in town, people will stop you at a bar and be like, how much will this cost? And I'll be like, I'm wankered, I don't want to give you a quote right now.
Yeah.
There is no off button when you're doing this. And I think it's the same for beauty and hair and all of that crap. I feel like you become more approachable because it is a social job that people do not switch off from it. And that's hard. And I think once a month I'll say to myself, I'm just going to turn my messages off.
Yeah.
I'm just going to ignore them.
Yeah.
You can't. You literally can't, because the next message might be the thing that sets your artistic fire alight. So you can never put it down. But it's always there.
Yeah, you are right. You know, I'm actually thinking about that. I think I've messaged Sammy quite early in the morning. Now I'm going to have to go to apologise.
We don't mind. It's just you never stop.
No.
It never ends, you know?
It was saying, what's the strangest thing that's happened to you as this? And is it, I mean, we've already talked about the fact that, you know, there's a level of inappropriacy, which is putting it mildly and politely. But I guess what's the, and I'm guessing you've got quite a good barometer for weird as well, haven't you?
Yeah, we get everything. Every walk of life, every kind of person
comes in.
Nothing surprises us anymore.
Every request. I do desperately want to ask, what's the weirdest requests you've had for stuff without naming names?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't do it. I will never ever do a tattoo that I find offensive to the point of unnecessary.
Right,
I have a dark sense of humour.
Yeah.
But I got asked for a really offensive tattoo.
Right.
And I think it was meant in a jokey, jesty way, but it was just bad taste.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have to be like, no, I'm not doing that. But then on the flip side of that, you will see people who have had offensive racist tattoos 40 years ago.
Yeah.
Before they were educated properly.
Yeah, yeah.
That will come to us and be like, I hate this.
I hate
this
that.
isn't who I am anymore. And I want to get rid of it.
Is there a part of the body you won't tattoo?
No.
Your tattoo?
There is members of Eden team that will not tattoo genitals. I'm not one of them. I've tattooed genitals. For me, skin is skin. It's part of it. We all have different boundaries.
Yeah.
I have tattooed penises. It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
But they will clean their own penis.
Absolutely.
Stencil their own
Bloody
penis.
hell.
The only that I'm doing is with a needle.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a weird situation actually, because most of the time when I'm tattooing penises, it tends to be tattooing a female's name on a penis. So I feel like they've probably been a bit naughty and now they need to be tagged on their willy.
Right. Oh, interesting.
And I feel like my stance on that is probably, if you need to brand their penis, it's probably best you just walk away. But everyone has different boundaries, you know.
So you will tattoo anyway. I mean, what's the most common place though that you tattoo?
For me, weirdly, sternums. I do sternums an awful lot.
Do you?
And maybe that is because I do them a lot, so I advertise them a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
So then people see them and be like, oh, can I have this on my sternum? So sternums is probably what I tattoo the most of. But I like weird placements. It's controversial, most tattooists wouldn't agree, but I like tattooing throats. I like tattooing faces.
Yeah.
I kind of like that weird element of what I'm doing. So
have you, I mean, because that's quite niche, isn't it?
So eye tattoos, contrary to belief, isn't done with a machine.
Right.
If you tried to machine tattoo an eye, it would not work.
Yeah.
So what an eye tattoo is that most people commonly see is an injection
of just dye,
ink
right,
in that layer. There is a massively high chance you'll go blind. It's so unregulated. Hardly anyone that's doing it is licensed to do it.
Yeah.
Because authorities aren't going to license you when there's a 40% chance that you might take someone's sight doing that.
Yeah.
So no, not something I would do. When we talk about skin, I'd do anywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
But mental shit like that, no.
Yeah. Someone said to me the other day, it might even have been Caroline, said that nails, people could tattoo.
I've never done them. I wouldn't know how to do them. I know how skin works.
Surely that grows out though.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, I guess I get it. You're getting a tattoo, but then it's just going to grow out.
With a nail, if you were tattooing below the nail bed, through the tattoo into the layer that isn't no longer your nail, it wouldn't grow out, because what a nail's doing is the nail's growing.
Yeah, yeah, so it's the nail bed. Yeah,
isn't.
okay.
So I guess it wouldn't grow out. I cannot imagine the pain of that. I mean, I've had my palms tattooed and that was bad enough.
Was it?
Like, I cannot imagine the pain of having a nail bed tattoo. But then we have had people that, I think Sammy did one last week actually, who have lost toenails through accidents.
Yes.
And then have that platform tattooed. And I know a tattooist in London. She's a really nice girl. She does cosmetic tattooing. So if you've got webbed feet or lost a nail, she puts them nails or webs back in. And it's incredibly impressive. So she has the Masterectomy Tattoo Alliance. That's her charity that she set up.
Okay.
And what it is women that have had cancer, who have lost their nipples, she now reconstructs them You would never
seen
know.
that, yeah.
She's absolutely incredible. But she also does that sort of side of it as well.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the toes. She's amazing.
Oh my gosh, I'm totally getting her number.
Yeah.
I'm getting a number. You touched on earlier a little bit about money, because I guess for people listening, I guess it's getting an idea of what you can earn and how it works in many ways. So you've obviously said, you started off cheap. Did you? I mean, I guess you had from your brother, you had a barometer of what sort of cost effective would look like. But so your rate card now, though, that you guys, I mean, do you all charge different rates?
Yeah, so we're all fairly different. We're all different speeds. So what you would get done in a day with me would be different to what you'd get done in a day with AD, and etc. etc. The money side of tattooing is really hard because it isn't just skill based.
Yeah.
It's not just based on skill, because what you would pay for a day of my time here would be double if we were in London.
Yeah.
So it is so place dependent.
Yeah,
And I do feel like you get to this point in your career where you spend a year or two doing cheap rates to get enough experience to be able to tattoo at a good rate.
Yeah.
And then you'll spend the next 2 years tattooing at a good rate, but probably stuff you don't want to tattoo. And now I'm spending this year discounting the stuff I want to tattoo, so I'm earning less than I was a year ago with more experience.
Because that's the artist
now I want
in
to do
you.
the passion bit.
Yeah.
So it's such a seesaw. Like I say, next year
You've almost got to go back to go forward each time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if you want to specialise in traditional, you need to do traditional cheap. You do 300 traditional tattoos.
To build up a portfolio to
then do it at a higher rate. So there is no clear-cut answer.
No.
There will be days that are shit and weeks that are shit, but it might set your passion on fire for what you're doing, and days that are great, but you won't remember one single tattoo you did because it's just things you didn't necessarily want to do. You've done them well, but in terms of artistic passion, there's none. So it's so varied.
And I guess, I mean, talking about, so who would be the top tattooists then in the UK? Or are they not really obvious? I guess I'm just trying to think about, I mean, are there people just earning hundreds of thousands of pounds?
Absolutely.
From what? Doing like the odd tattoo? And they pick and choose?
So there is tattooists such as Paul Booth, who has got a massive reputation for being an incredible horror artist. And he is incredible. He could work one day a month and earn what I earn in a month.
But is that because he's doing quite an intricate big thing, or just...
He's amazing. He is amazing.
So you're paying for him?
But you are paying for his reputation as well as his art.
Yeah.
I know amazing tattooists who are charging £300 a day because they aren't well known.
Yeah.
But their work is just as outstanding.
Yeah.
But they maybe haven't got that social media following. They haven't got that.
I was
going
to ask that. So how did he get famous, for want of a better phrase? Then?
I think when he started doing what he was doing, it was a relatively breakthrough thing.
Yeah.
He was like a really cool horror artist, and it was the time where like Skin Deep and all of them things were rising to fame.
Yeah.
So he was then published in loads of them.
Right.
Got a massive following. Right time and place is a lot of what this industry
and
is.
social, do you think social's played a massive part in it?
Probably not so much for him back then, if I'm honest, because back then it wasn't like it is today. You didn't need to be massive on social media. He's massive on social media now. But
that's
back
not
then, probably not. It was more magazine, newspaper, all of that crap that built a following for him. Now, if you're talking about earning hundreds of thousands a year, it's probably for a good social media following.
Yeah. What next? Where do you guys... I want to say where do you go from here, but where does the whole studio... Because now you're a collective, aren't you? You're a group.
But that's where it gets slightly more complicated again, because we are a collective group. But I think me and Caroline, who you've met, the next step is we want a vintage shop in Stamford. We feel like there's not really anything here in Stamford.
There really isn't.
So I would continue to tattoo part-time. And have a vintage shop part-time. We've made all of our business plans. We know all of our plans to do it. It's just the perfect space. We've looked at so many.
And you would tattoo from the shop, I guess.
No, Eden will stay as Eden is.
Yeah.
And this will be a separate little venture where we'll be selling like vintage 90s, 80s kind of retro clothes. Not so much the vintage side of like 40s and 50s. We don't know that much about it. And there's already an amazing lady who works in Oakham doing that. But do you know like the 90s, 80s kind of fashion that kids are loving now?
Oh my God, yeah.
We want to do something with that, I think. in terms of a vintage shop, it is really likely that it might never make great money.
Yeah.
And if it does, it definitely won't for a year.
Yeah.
But we just want to do something, you know?
Yeah.
So that's maybe the short-time plan. I also want to do an art exhibition that I'm really excited about, working with people between 80 and 90 years old. Fairly complicated thing. So that's probably short-term plan, those two things. Long-term plan, and I've always said it from the day that I opened Rock and Roo 6 years ago, is that I want a secondary studio in Brighton. Again, I don't know if it would be a shared thing like Eden is, whether any of them would also want to do it, but I want to eventually live between Stamford
and Brighton.
Part-time here, cool. Part-time there. I love it there. I want to retire there. It's like my happy place.
Yeah, well, it's such a creative, artistic...
Brilliant. Everyone is so free, and I love that. So I think maybe sort of Monday to Wednesday within Stamford, within Eden with those guys, and then Wednesday to Sunday in Brighton. Whether those guys want to be part of it or not, I'm not really sure yet, because like I say, that's sort of 5 years plan.
Yeah. The final question I'm going to ask everyone on all of these podcasts is just one bit of life advice. What bit of advice would you give the listener that you think might help them?
Again, I think I'm really quite bipolar in my advice stance. But it is actually Ricky Gervais, and it's literally the quote, "Kindness is magic." I've got it tattooed on my knee there. I feel like wherever you get in life, whoever you become, if you're an arsehole doing it, you have completely wasted your time.
Yeah.
Because there is nobody that I know that is going to get to the end of their life and be like, I'm really glad I made that 100,000 and stamped on all those people doing it. If you've got to be an arsehole, it's not worth it. Literally live by kindness.
And do you believe quite strongly in karma then as a result of that? Yeah.
Hugely. I feel like you will never ever be able to take out of your life what you haven't put into it.
No.
And there will be people that get really lucky and you'll be sat there thinking, yeah, but I know this bloke who is an arsehole and he's got all of this and this big house, and I promise you he's miserable. Because if he wasn't miserable, he wouldn't be an arsehole. I would rather have nothing and have peace.
But yeah, gosh, thank you so much. That's been just fantastic.
Really
and thanks. Thank you so much. If you would like to hear more about this chat, see some behind the scenes pics and some personal profile pics, plus read about how to get started in this industry and or this role, then please go and support us on Patreon. The link is on this podcast page and across all of our socials. Sincere thanks in advance.